Hi, my name's Brian Fitzgerald. A while back I was doing some internet correspondence on aviation news groups and such when I came upon a great guy you're going to meet later named Greg Smith. Now Greg has promoted and organized an owners group of the Pulsar home-built aircraft. They typically meet once a year. I asked if they wouldn't mind my son Jack and I joining them for a few days during one of their gatherings to find out about the Pulsar. Greg thought it was a great idea. Let's wait for a second here though. I want you to see this shot and I don't want to cover it up. Pretty cute, huh? This tape is an overview of the Pulsar Kitplane from the owner-builder standpoint. It's an opportunity for you to meet people who fly Pulsars in particular and Kitplanes in general. The only person in the movie with a major fiduciary interest is the owner of the Pulsar factory. He'll be talking about the Super Pulsar and really puts on his salesman's hat. But who can blame him? These are fine aircraft and are excellent examples of American sport aviation. Travel to Lawrence, Kansas to the annual Pulsar Fly-In. It's a gathering of home builders of the Pulsar aircraft and enthusiasts. They come from all over the country just to be here. I met Bob and Carol Heiser just as they were deplaning from their Pulsar after completing their flight from their home in San Angelo, Texas.
This is a new one. This only got 50 hours on it. It's just out of its test period. It's our first long cross country in it.
First plane you built?
First plane I've built. Owned 6 production airplanes, but first one we built.
Yeah? How would you compare this to your other aircraft?
Oh, the performance is dramatically improved. And the pride of ownership is, order of magnitude greater. You stop at an airport, people come out and look at this. You fly in a Cessna or Piper and, nobody looks.
Right.
Probably took longer than I expected. But difficult, I don't think, just more time consuming, especially sanding, building the canopy. There's some ugly jobs like sealing the fuel tanks with pro seal. It gets everywhere.
Yeah.
It's like working with asphalt, on a driveway or roof. It just gets all over.
Would you consider yourself a handyman, or is this the first time with tools for you?
Oh no, I'm a handyman.
We built 2 homes.
We built 2 homes, so
from scratch.
Building big projects is not new to us.
Ah, okay. Would you say that's a necessity if you're going to get into one of these kind of projects?
No, there's all kinds of expertise, in the local EAA chapters. You can, a neophyte, somebody with 2 left hands can take their time and they can do it.
The builder's
They may redo a few things, but they can do it. There's people here in that situation.
The internet too, builders.
Yeah, the builder forum on the internet is just invaluable for tips and techniques and answering questions.
Now here's a guy with a great attitude about life and the organizer of the Pulsar Owners Fly-In, Greg Smith of St. Joseph, Missouri.
Hi, I'm Greg Smith. I'm the host for the Pulsar Fly-In, held here in Lawrence, Kansas every year. Pulsar is a home-built airplane built from a kit. Composite construction for the most part. Some of them have wood wings, as this one does. This is an early model. This is my Pulsar. I took 5 years to build my Pulsar, finished it in 1995. Been flying it ever since. Have around 850 hours on it. Over the winter, had a little project where I wanted to change out the engine, so it's now a work in process again as I go through the throes of changing out to a new power plant for my Pulsar. My buddy and I, Larry Eubanks, shopped around at Oshkosh for many years trying to figure out what kind of an airplane we could build, number one, and number two, what kind of an airplane we would enjoy flying. One of our criteria was that it had to be a two-seater so we could take our wives with us. And another criteria was that it had to be easy enough to build that we could get them done, because the thrill was not in the building, the thrill was in the flying of the aircraft, and we wanted to get them in the air as fast as we could. It took us quite a few years looking at various kits before we finally saw Mark Brown at Oshkosh in 1989 introduce the Pulsar. And we both took one look at that airplane on the flight line and said, that's the one. So that's where it started. The assembly manuals for the Pulsar were excellent. Mark Brown spent a lot of time in getting those assembly manuals right. It was just a matter of following a step-by-step process, and the steps were actually numbered in that manual. So if you can read and comprehend what you're reading, okay, you can build this airplane. An airplane is a complicated machine, and after all, once you finish it, you're going to fly it. The machine's going to leave the ground. Follow the directions, and that's what Larry and I did. That made us successful at building the aircraft. Was we were very tedious about following the directions, and when we didn't understand something, we always called the factory and asked them, "How do you do this? I'm not understanding something." And therefore, we built a safe airplane, and that's a big factor in this building process, is that you want a safe aircraft to fly. You don't want something to go wrong when you're airborne. I learned how to fly when I was an airman in the Air Force back in the 60s. All of my experience at that point was in Cessna 150s and 152s, occasionally a 172. To get ready to fly the Pulsar, I took some time in a Grumman, a little Yankee two-place, which gave me some low wing time, also gave me the experience of the higher sink rate and the faster approach speeds that you get out of a Grumman low wing. That's about the extent of my flight experience, mostly high wing Cessnas, and then the Grumman in preparation for flying the Pulsar. Since I started flying the Pulsar in 1995, I've flown the Pulsar for over 850 hours. I have done 6 first flights, experimental flights for other builders, where I'll travel to wherever they happen to be, and after a lengthy inspection, we'll actually take their airplane up for its first flight and put it through some handling maneuvers just to make sure it's a safe aircraft for them as a builder turning test pilot for the first time. Most of my experience has been in the 152, so I'd like to talk about that for a minute. You know, Cessna 152, it's a slower aircraft, number one. Number two, the control surfaces are very large and take large movements in order to bank the aircraft or steer it with the rudder or make it go up and down with the elevator. On the Pulsar, you think those directions. You don't actually sit there and think, I'm going to move the stick. The Pulsar has a center-mounted stick, and if you start moving the stick like this, you're going to be all over the sky. It has the performance characteristics in that respect of a jet. You can think of it as a little fighter jet, because you start moving the stick and this thing is just going to go all over on you. What you have to get used to, if you think in terms of a 152, when you grab a hold of that wheel in front of you, okay, when you're ready to take off, you pull that wheel back. And when you're going down, you push that wheel forward. And when you lower those flaps, okay, you got all that constant pressure. Those big barn door flaps on a 152 will bring that nose down just like this on your approach. Okay, on the Pulsars, it's extremely different characteristics. When you're flying along at 130 miles an hour and you want to bank the plane to the right, you think, bank the plane to the right. And as you're thinking that, you just apply a little pressure to your right hand. And just by applying the pressure to the stick, the ailerons move enough that you're in a bank. Same on in terms of elevator movement. You think up and you think down, okay? And that brings that plane right in for you. It's pressure on the stick, not movement on the stick. And that's where a lot of first-time Pulsar pilots get in trouble. This airplane is equipped with a Jabiru 2200. As you can see, I'm still doing some work on that to adapt the Jabiru 2200 to the Pulsar because that wasn't a factory option to begin with. And I originally had a Rotax 582 in this airplane and flew it for many years that way. But in terms of the Jabiru powered aircraft, it climbs at around 1,400 feet a minute and will cruise at about 130 miles an hour, and top speed on it is about 155 miles an hour. And stall is around 48 miles an hour. So you have a wide range of performance for this particular aircraft. If you have two people on board, it suffers quite a bit. Climb goes down to 1,000 feet a minute. Top speed goes down another 5 miles an hour to 150 miles an hour. But still, that's very decent performance for a little sport aircraft. In terms of handling in turbulence and wind, it is a small aircraft, and it tends to bounce around quite a bit, so it can become a handful in turbulence. But that's just all part of it. You know the limitations of your aircraft first off, and you know the limitations of you as a pilot. For the last 6 months of last year, I've been corresponding via email with a gentleman over in Denmark who had taken the 582 engine out of his Pulsar and installed the Jabiru engine. And we talked extensively via email about the performance characteristics and the effort that went into making that conversion. So I asked him to send me some pictures and some drawings of the engine mount and a few things like that so that I could get an idea of what size of job it was that I was tackling here. I got those and finally made the decision after our fly-in last year that I needed to take the airplane home and do the conversion. So I ordered the engine out of Australia. That's where the engine is built, Jabiru engine. And while I was waiting on that, I had the plane at home and I started the teardown procedure to tear the old 582 engine out and the old engine mount out. And it involves some extensive modifications to the cowl. The cowl is very dynamic and it fit, aerodynamic, and it fit the 582 very close. So when you put in the Jabiru engine has an oil sump that's this deep. And I had to modify the cowl to accommodate that new oil sump. And also the muffler is on the bottom side right behind the oil sump. So it takes up a lot of room that it would not be contained in the 582 cowl. So that's why you see the working process that we have here today. I've had to rebuild the cowl to accommodate the new engine. I'm also redoing the front of the cowl for all the air intakes. The Jabiru engine is an air-cooled engine. It's a 4-cylinder air-cooled engine. And therefore, you have to have an air induction system, some way of force cooling those cylinders. And when I take the cowl off here, I'll show you the air induction system that I've modified that was shipped to me by Jabiru. Now the cowl is, as you can probably tell, is all freehand. Basically taking, once I had the engine positioned where I wanted it positioned, okay, then I started taking this blue foam that you can buy at the lumber yard and started cutting that up and gluing that together underneath there, forming a new cowl. Once I had all the foam in there, I started sanding it down and smoothing it out. Once all of that was done, then I started laying up glass on top of that, kind of like a paper mache, and just building the glass up over that foam to where I had 4 layers of glass in there, making the design for the new cowling. Once it was all set up, pulled everything apart, pulled the foam out, and then refitted the cowl and glassed that lower cowl onto the side of the old cowl. In terms of fiberglass, if you read the manual first, it tells you exactly how to lay up your fiberglass. It also has pictures of what a good layup looks like, okay? It also has some pictures of what a bad layup looks like, which is just as important. So if you follow the manual, you'll learn how to work with fiberglass properly in building an aircraft. And in fact, if you talk to any of our builders, we do a lot of self-help at the fly-in, and we talk about these kinds of things, the techniques that go into building the aircraft. So here's what we got in terms of the new conversion. The Jabiru 2200 is a 80 horsepower engine. It's a 4-cylinder, flat, air-cooled engine. Maximum RPM on the engine is 3,300. I peak it out at 3,250 with the prop that I have on it currently, which seems to be just about right for this particular installation, with excellent climb performance and excellent cruise performance. These are the air intakes that I was talking about that do the cooling for the engine. As you can see, I've modified them and played around with them quite a bit here to get the right type of cooling, and that's been a major portion of the effort, is get the right cooling into the engine. Down below I've got an oil cooler, and I got some ducts up front here for oil cooling as well. This is a stock air cleaner from Jabiru, and with this particular engine you have to watch for carburetor icing, so you have to do some modification here to be able to pull heat into that carburetor, and that's all done in this air box with cable mechanisms and a little switch door here. It actually turned out to be a very neat installation, even though I had to build the engine mount from scratch, and from that standpoint there was a lot of trial fitting. I'm not a welder, and in fact the first shots at building this engine mount, I actually used dowel rod, wood dowel rod. I made the engine mounts out of dowel rod, got everything fitting the way I wanted it, and then I took it to a welder who does aircraft work and had him weld the 4130 steel tubing for me to make the engine mount. A lot of trial fitting. I think I spent several months getting that engine mount fitted just right to where the engine was set in the cowling just right. The Jabiru company now furnishes an engine mount with their engine specifically designed for the Pulsar, and in fact they have also come out with cowls to fit the engine that fiberglass, or actually they don't fiberglass at all. They bolt to the engine mount. So it's a much neater installation now. It always takes the pioneers to get things going. The Jabiru engine is an excellent engine. I haven't had a lick of trouble with the engine itself. I've had to pioneer a lot of the installation effort here, and that's probably caused more issues than anything else. And right now I'm working on several issues. One, I'm still working on cooling. That's why I don't have the finish work in here, is because I'm still trying to refine the cooling a little bit. The cooling is good right now. I'd like to refine it just a little bit more before I finally say, okay, I'm done, I'm ready to paint it. I love the engine. I think it's ideal. It's lightweight, lots of horsepower, economical to run, and a good performer. So far I'm very happy with the engine. Now, matching a prop to an airplane and an engine installation is an art. Factories spend lots and lots of time in doing that. And since I am the factory in this particular case, I've had to learn the hard way how to match the prop to the engine. And it's been a trial and error method for quite some time. I've used 3 different props on this engine installation to get the right one. The people at Cincinnati Prop agreed to work with me to match the prop. And we started off with a prop that they had designed for the Sonics Jabiru installation. They shipped me one of those props. I put it on the plane. When I took off, I was behind the airplane immediately. It was going like a rocket. I wasn't used to that kind of performance out of this airplane. And climbed well and had excellent speed. And since working with it a little bit more, working with the aerodynamics, I called Cincinnati Prop and I said, you can't have the prop back, just send me the bill. It's a perfect installation. It's a perfect prop for this installation. In terms of differences between the Jabiru 2200 and the 582 Rotex, there's quite a few differences. Number one, this is a 4-cylinder, air-cooled, 4-cycle engine. This burns 100 low lead aircraft aviation fuel. and it has an oil sump, and it uses Shell 100 aviation oil. So in a lot of respects, with twin ignition and everything else, this is a true aircraft engine. The Rotax 582 is a two-cycle, two-cylinder engine that develops 65 horsepower. Doesn't have an oil sump, number one. You have to mix your oil with your gas or use the oil injection system that comes on the engine. And the 582 engine is also water-cooled. So you have a water pump, and you also have the radiators up front here to circulate and cool the water. After a little over 5 years flying with the 582, I had 3 engines and had them in for overhauls. You have to overhaul a 582 engine at 300 hours. And it just turned out that the life of the 582 Pulsar engine was just too short for the types of things that I do. I enjoy flying a lot. I like to fly a lot. I like to fly a lot of cross-country work. And the 582 is more adaptive for local flying and for short hops. And I was pressing the envelope on the 582 in my airplane. So when I had the opportunity to go to the Jabiru engine, which gave me more performance with about the same amount of weight up here in the cow, it seemed like a no-brainer. So there's quite a few differences. The main thing about the Jabiru and the 582 is the install weight is just about the same. So I didn't upset the balance of the aircraft by putting this Jabiru engine in the airplane. I had to do one thing. I had a motorcycle battery that was mounted up here, and that motorcycle battery was used to start the 582 Jabiru. Once I had this installation in place, I found that to get rid of a slight nose-heavy feeling on the stick, I moved the battery from the firewall to back behind the seat. Balance, weight and balance comes out perfect, right where I want it to be. Pulsar is a good aircraft. It's a good first-time build aircraft, number one. This is certainly the first aircraft I've ever built. It's a buildable aircraft, number one. Number two, it's still being produced here in the United States, so spare parts are available, and that's very important to any kit builder. Number three, we have probably one of the best support networks on the home builder scene. I run the fly-in here in Lawrence, Kansas every year. We attract more and more flyers every year as they complete their airplane. We do our own builder seminars here. We have our own network page where we exchange information, exchange suggestions, ask questions, get help. There's a lot of engineers in our organization and people that are already flying that are helping people that are still building. And we've developed a very solid self-help network. And I think that's very important in terms of a first-time builder getting into the market to build his own airplane, is to be able to talk to people that are doing it or have done it and ask the questions, well, how can I do this? Sometimes there may be a better way of doing it. And we've found quite a few of those too.
Ever since their introduction in the early 80s, I have been a fan, promoter, and user of the Macintosh computer, of which I've owned many and on which I produced this video. I say this because now I've finally had the opportunity to meet one of the guys who programmed the software I've used to do my video work these years. Meet Casey King of Austin, Texas.
Yeah, my name's Casey King. I'm from Austin, Texas. This is a Pulsar XP, so it's got a 912 Rotax engine in it. I started it in 1993. It took me about 3.5 to 4 years to finish it. You know, it's a great performing airplane. I've flown it up to Kansas 3 times. Got about 160 hours on the plane, so you know, I'm flying it probably 40 or 50 hours a year. Didn't fly a lot last year, but it'll lift everything you can put up. Anything you can put in the cockpit, it'll lift it up. Great performer. You know, it goes on you know, usually 3.5 to 4 gallons of fuel an hour. It's just guiltless flying. You just put gas in it and go, and it's just a great performing plane. This is the first plane I ever built. I did build some radio control and U-line model airplanes when I was a kid, but it's really just as simple as following the instructions, learning a few new skills. I mean, the most important skill is just persistence and patience. I mean, anybody can build the airplane if they just take their time and just progress through it. I mean, the most important thing that I think that made me successful in building the Pulsar was, I mean, I would just continually work on it. I mean, I tried to work on it every day, even if it was just for 15 or 30 minutes a day, and try not to encounter any gaps of, several days or several weeks to interrupt the building. But yeah, it's not beyond the means of anybody. It's a very easy plane as far as kit planes go to build. Well, I got my license when I was 17, so I've been flying for for many years, but all of my experiences has been in light general aviation airplanes. Cessna 150, 152s, 172s, Piper, Archer, Arrows. Yeah, this plane is not a lot different than those. It's more sensitive. It just feels more like, instead of driving a family sedan, it's more like driving a little sports car. I mean, once you get used to the pitch sensitivity and just how agile it is, it's really, really easy to transition into it. It's a great plane for landing in crosswinds. I mean, we came in here Thursday afternoon. It was 25, gusting to 34 knots at about a 45-degree crosswind. And I mean, while it was certainly an interesting landing, it's well within the capabilities of the Pulsar and a low-time pilot. I think that I mean, it's a great plane to transition into from a 172, for instance. I've been into sport aviation since I can remember. When I learned to fly when I was 17, it was at an airport that was predominantly had a lot of home-built airplanes, and I had some time and got to solo some home builds before, when I was young. There was a design called the Starlight, which was the predecessor to the Pulsar, which I was really interested in. It was a single-seat, single-place airplane. So it really wasn't quite exactly the plane that I wanted to build. So when they came out with a two-place, I was really, really interested in it. I mean, I like the simplicity, the lightweight, the operating efficiency, the performance for the cost. It was really hard to get in another airplane that I thought was as good looking and as good performing and as safe on both ends of the operating spectrum as the Pulsar. The Vans aircrafts are great. If I was building again today, I'd consider those. They're great airplanes too, but I'd still consider the Pulsar because it's just a very unique plane, very unique platform for recreational flying. I'm a computer software guy. I used to work for Apple Computer for 12 and a half years, so I write multimedia software, and I still do that today. So really, the skills for the Pulsar and what I do professionally couldn't be farther apart. But it's all about patience and willing to take your time and make a few phone calls and talk to some fellow Pulsar builders. I mean, patience is the big key. There's nothing that requires extraordinary skills with the Pulsar. You'll get very, very good at doing certain things, especially with fiberglass, like filling, sanding, and really trying to make the airplane, aesthetically look nice. But mechanically, I mean, it's very straightforward. I mean, you just do some fiberglass layups and build one piece after the other, and before you know it, you've got an airplane. A satisfying thing for me was, you can go and within just a few days or a few weeks, pieces go together very quickly. So you spend a weekend, you've got the vertical stabilizer finished. The very first job of the airplane is to put both fuselage halves together. So 6 hours later, they're both taped together. They cure overnight. The next morning, you're in the plane, sitting in it, making airplane noises like you're foreshadowing things that are going to happen a few years down the road. So it really goes together easy. Anybody that's mechanically inclined and enjoys working on mechanical things, a pilot obviously, or anybody that has ambitions to fly. It's tough. You go out and you start pricing some single-engine airplanes that are out there today, and you can certainly get a used one in the $30,000 to $50,000 to $70,000 range. You can get a new one for $200,000 up to $300,000. So it's, I mean, I think that people that get into the sport, come into it from an economic situation that, you know, they want some great performance on a little bit better financial on a budget. So, you know, the Pulsar fits in great there. I mean, you know, you can, for a fraction of the cost, you can get into the airplane. You know, and also, you know, just the camaraderie. I mean, you know, one of the things they didn't tell me about whenever I bought the kit was that I'd be out at Lawrence, Kansas with, you know, 16 other Pulsars and 70 other people, and in communication over the internet with 250 other people all over the world. You know, that's one of the intangibles that you get out. And I mean, I can go anywhere in the world today and feel like I've got some Pulsar family that I can go visit, you know, interact with, have some common ground with. Well, yeah, you know, Mark Brown, who was the designer of the airplane, I mean, the plane was built around the 582, really. Great performer on a two-stroke airplane. I came into aviation, you know, kind of in a traditional manner. So I was more comfortable with a four-stroke, four-cylinder aircraft aviation engines. I know the 582 is a great performing airplane, but I just felt a little bit more comfortable behind a four-stroke, four-cylinder one. You know, the TBO on it is quite a bit longer. You know, certainly more cash outlay out front, but you know, if you add up all the maintenance cost over the lifetime of the project, it's probably pretty much a wash. I just felt safer, and I just felt like it was a more reliable power plant. But you know, I fly with a buddy of mine out of near Austin, Doug Witkowski, and he's got a 582 and takes, you know, it's in top-notch maintenance condition. And you know, I feel just as comfortable flying behind that one as I do this one. When we fly up cross country, you know, I'm probably at 55% power and he's probably at 75% power. So, you know, I'm definitely throttled back. You know, the climb on mine is a little bit better. I mean, if I go at gross weight, the performance is a little bit better. You know, the operating temperatures are all in the green for me at almost any attitude. Yeah, so, you know, Doug will have to, you know, monitor, you know, temperature a little bit more than I will. You know, when we're at a fuel stop, you know, I just roll the fuel truck up and, you know, throw in whatever fuel I need. He's got to mix oil with the fuel to put it in. But you know, it's mainly just a little bit different performer, maybe 15 miles an hour or so, and maybe a little bit better in climb. But you know, it's both of them. Once you're in flight, I mean, he can hum along at a pretty good cruise rate on that little 65 horsepower engine. So it's great now that there's so many different power plant options for the Pulsar. You know, there's a lot of options for builders and people that may want to retrofit, you know, another engine, you know, today. But I'll tell you what, if I was to do it all over again, I mean, I'd put the 912 in it or the 912S. I mean, in my opinion, it's just a bulletproof engine. I have all the confidence in the world in it. It's a perfect power plant for this particular airplane because it's light. I mean, my plane is, on the light side, is 560 pounds empty. So if you keep it light when you're building, the 912 is just a phenomenal performer for the airframe. The rear windows were kind of an afterthought. I had the plane all finished, all primed, all you know, bondoed out, ready for primer, and then I can't remember exactly who it was. Maybe Martin Wright's airplane. Put some rear windows in. I really liked it, and Aero Designs, which was the original manufacturer of the Pulsar from who I bought it from, started kitting up the windows. So I went down to San Antonio, picked up a set of windows, came back in, and with my Dremel tool that afternoon, I laid the windows up and I cut a big hole in my fuselage. I figured if I didn't do it just right then I'd just be sitting there, you know, talking about it for 3 weeks. So then I started all over again. You know, I had to prep it up, put the windows in, re-glass it, refill it. You know, several weeks later, you know, it was back to the point where I was before. But I'm really glad I put the rear windows in. You know, it gives, you know, you can definitely see back much better, you know, when you're flying, if you're flying with somebody or you want to pick up something that you've just passed. But another benefit is you just kind of get some more ambient light. If the sun's behind you, you got a little bit more glass that the light can come through, and I think it just makes the plane look better. You know, I think that you know, without them, it's just kind of a big broad side of the fuselage, and I just think it kind of adds a little bit to the lines. And there's several different options for rear windows. I know Dan Billings kitted up a set early on, and there's some planes here that have those. Some guys have done their own, and some guys have chosen not to do anything at all. But yeah, that's just the nice thing about the plane is, everybody gets to add a little bit, some personal touches here and there. I decided against putting lights in from the very beginning of the airplane. I really was hesitant about the safety of flying the plane I built with a experimental engine, at night. The cost of it is several $100s. The power budget, I mean, you use up a bunch of power to drive those strobe lights. And for me, I mean, the plane was just meant for VFR, sport aviation. If it was nighttime, then I really wanted to be down on the ground in the hotel somewhere. A lot of guys put the time and effort into putting lights on, and I'll tell you, it is a big job. I mean, to fare those clear lenses into the wingtips and to get all the electrical stuff out to the wingtips and back to the tail, and I don't think, I mean, there are some people that fly at night in their Pulsars, but I would bet that most of the people would get by just fine without having any lights at all. You save a little bit of weight, you save a little bit of effort when you're building and maintenance, and I certainly haven't had the need to fly at night. So the reason I chose a tricycle gear over a conventional gear was mainly my pilot training and the planes I'd flown before. So I never have been checked out in a tail wheel, so I just felt much more comfortable having a tricycle gear airplane. The Taildragger is going to pick you up a couple, probably up to 5 miles an hour, probably less than that, 2 or 3 miles an hour in cruise. So it's probably not a big factor performance-wise in choosing the tail wheel over the tricycle gear. It's all about probably what it looks like, and the guys that build the Taildraggers, just really like the way the airplane sits, tail low. It's a religious battle. The guys that have the tricycle gears like to have the wheel up front. And I forget who it was that was kidding about it the other day. Everybody in a Taildragger, wants to be a tricycle gear because that rear wheel just keeps wanting to turn around and ground loop up to the front. So it's a battle. It's not going to be solved in the Pulsar. It's something that's been going on for ages, and it's just nice to be able to have a couple different alternatives from a gear standpoint to put on the airplane.
You remember that shot in the open of this movie with the little boy standing next to that pretty yellow Pulsar? It was totally unrehearsed, and it was one of those pictures that are worth 1,000 words, so I guess I don't need to write or speak anymore. Anyway, that is Douglas Witkowski, and here is his dad, Doug Witkowski, from Dripping Springs, Texas.
Hi, I'm Doug Witkowski and my son Douglas Witkowski, and we're from Dripping Springs, Texas, and we flew up a couple days ago up here to Lawrence, Kansas for our little Pulsar fly-in. About 660 miles over about a 5.5-hour trip, and we're just having some good times with our friends here flying and talking about planes. We typically run between 120 and 130. If I'm by myself, I run a little slower, but I was running with a faster plane, so we ran about 130, sometimes 135. And over the ground, we were seeing about 105 to 96. We had some winds on the way up. It's a long building process. It takes a lot of dedication and just sticking to it. Nothing's really hard in it. Nothing that most people who could use a screwdriver and a hammer can't do. But you have to keep at it day after day, and otherwise you'll slip behind and never get it finished. I was always interested in flying ever since the BD-5 came out. I kind of got the bug, but never really did it until I had an opportunity to use a friend's plane to learn to fly. And then shortly after that, I decided I want my own. So we started looking around for home builds because they're so much cheaper to maintain and fly. And Mark Brown from Aero Designs was down in San Antonio, real close to where we live. So we went down and looked at his plane and flew with it, and liked it a lot, and liked the fact that we were close enough that we'd have good customer support. And they were real good all the way through the whole building process. At home, I work with my hands all the time. I'm always doing projects around the house. I used to build race cars and just all kinds of stuff, anywhere from building antique light fixtures to cars and planes. The tasks are one little step at a time. If you stand back and look at the whole project as a big plane, it's pretty daunting. But most of the companies lay out the process one step at a time. You do this layup, you get it done, and you walk away, and you relax and think about the next process. And so it's not really that hard. Each little task is pretty easy. Building the wings, you sometimes need some help to put the ribs in because you have to do them pretty quickly while the glue is setting up. But it doesn't take a lot of skill. And confidence seems to be the biggest problem most people have. They'll read the instructions and they're kind of afraid to jump in there and do it. And this particular plane, the first layups you do are fairly simple, so they give you some good confidence to continue on to the more complex things. I think if you could screw in a light bulb and hang a picture on the wall or something like that, if you have a few tools around the house, you can probably do this kind of work. The metal planes are a little tougher because you got to have a buddy to help you to buck rivets and everything, and there's more chance of messing up. This stuff here, if you do a layup and it's bad and you don't like it, you get the grinder out and you grind it off and you do it over again. So it's not that tough. I learned in a 172 and flew Cubs and Champs and a Cessna 120 for a little while to get my Taildragger. And this plane is really a lot easier than the others. It has no weight at all. It weighs 475 empty, so it has no inertia. Has real powerful controls, so it is truly a two-finger plane. If you grab the grip, you know, a lot of these guys come out here and they put the fighter grips on there, you know. Well, if you grab it like that, you are not going to be able to feel the plane. It is definitely a very gentle plane, but it's very forgiving. It's to get to a stall, you are really nose high and you know you're going to approach a stall. I did my BFR in this last time and I took up the instructor and she said, okay, let's do some stalls. We did a few stalls and she goes, okay, I want you to do a power on, full power stall. I told her, I said, well, I've never done a full power stall on this plane. She goes, why not? And I said, well, let me show you. And I gave it full power and I started pulling up and we were still doing about 52, 53 miles an hour. And of course the plane just hanging on the prop and she goes, okay, that's enough. We don't need to do that, yeah. So it's really a forgiving plane. I built the Taildragger because I was hoping to fly in out of grass fields, which I do once in a while. It is such an easy Taildragger plane that I don't really consider myself Taildragger current anymore. Well, about a year ago I got back in a Champ and flew it and I couldn't even hardly control the thing. I just got lazy because this thing is so much easier to fly. My wife kind of suggested the yellow. She thought it'd be kind of fun to paint it bright yellow. A lot of these other schemes are more serious paint schemes, and I never really consider this a serious plane. This is kind of a little clown plane, you know, for the air. It does everything real well, but you know, it's not a Cessna. So I thought I'd give it a more fun paint scheme. This plane has the 582 Rotax, two-cylinder, two-stroke. At the time I bought the kit, it was really the only engine being offered, and Mark Brown designed this plane around that engine pretty much. He was starting to tinker with the 912, but it wasn't really out yet. And his recommendation really was the 582. It gives the plane a much lighter, more fighter feel. It is much more responsive just because it is a little bit lighter, and also because of the cost. The 582s, I can throw this engine away and buy a new one for about 70% of what it would cost to overhaul an 0300, you know, and so it's an inexpensive engine. Being a two-stroke, you always kind of wonder if it's going to keep running on you because you hear the horror stories. But I've had about 300 hours on this one and really had no problems whatsoever. If it lights, it runs, you know. I think if you watch your temperatures, both minimum water temp and maximum exhaust temperatures, use a good quality oil in them, I think they'll run the distance for you. We do have trouble keeping the engines warm enough. The four-strokes run a little too cool. This plane here was running about 130 degrees coming up, and I've got to put some duct tape across the radiator to keep it warm. They like to run about 140 minimum, and we've got probably more cooling than we need. Of course, on a hot Texas 105 degree afternoon, we're getting the temperatures up there on climb out, but the real trick to keep the two-strokes alive is to don't give them a lot of power when they're cold, because they'll swell and seize, and that'll be the end of it. I do engine out practices. I'm probably one of the few people out here who have taken it off and just shut it down just to see how the plane feels. And it does feel considerably different than when it's running. But when you're flying, you're always looking for a landing place normally, and probably maybe a little more so with the two-stroke. The plane gets, well, the feeling changes when you kill the engine. You lose a lot of rudder authority, but the elevator authority seems to be greater, and I think it's mostly because you lose your gyroscopic effect of the prop that helps stabilize the plane. And so roll and pitch become a lot more sensitive, and it's going to be a lot easier for somebody who has an engine out to over control the plane. And so it's probably a good idea to go up and fly it engine off, get a feel for it, get it back to your best glide rate, and realize how it's going to change. Other than this trip, I've flown to Oshkosh and I've flown to Sun and Fun, but this is the only long trip I take once a year. Most of the time I just putter around the patch or go out and get a hamburger or something like that. And so I would say it'd be a good plane for a person like that. But on the other hand, we got a bunch of guys out here at the 912s. One fellow who flew from Florida to Washington State. And a lot of these guys fly a lot of miles cross country. And for a two-person cross-country plane, it's pretty good. Two close, intimate people, with fairly light luggage. Casey King and I, we both weigh about 185. We came up in this plane together one year, and we could carry 40 pounds of luggage, and we were still under gross. But it's a tight plane. It tends to be more fun by yourself with 5 gallons of fuel and just get up in the air and toss it around. It's not an aerobatic plane. It picks up speed way too fast when the nose is pointed down to do aerobatics, but it is nimble and just a lot of fun. When I first looked for an airplane, I looked at a lot of different planes. I love biplanes, and I thought of the Hats, and I thought of the Celebrity. The build time for those planes are pretty long. The build time for this one was advertised at 1,000 hours, and if you stuck to the plans, it was probably pretty honest. When you start adding lights and electric trim and all that stuff, it really changes it. But the cost, I think this kit was about $20,000, including the engine. All you had is paint, upholstery, and a battery. So it was a really cost-effective kit, and it was a kit that you could build all by yourself. You didn't need somebody helping you buck rivets or lay up boards or that kind of stuff. I pretty much, except for one friend who helped me on some of the big layups, I pretty much did the whole thing myself night after night in the garage. No special tools. It's handy to have a variable speed saber saw so you can cut some of these fiberglass panels. All the jigging you make yourself, and there's instructions in the book on how to make it. It's just pieces of wood cut up. You have to build a wing table to build the wings, but everything else is pretty simple. There aren't very many tools. You could do it with a hacksaw and a putty knife and lots of sandpaper, lots and lots of sandpaper. And a bunch of disposable brushes for putting on the epoxy, but it's pretty easy. And one of the fun things about doing home-built planes is you can kind of deviate from the plans, and everybody has to do something to customize their plane. This light fixture is one of my ideas. A lot of people just put an existing type of bulb in the tail, and I thought, well, it'd be nice if I could make something that kind of blends in with the body. So basically what I did is I cut the tail of the plane off, which was a little nerve-wracking in itself, and used the plug to make myself a mold. Then I made a male mold that went inside here to give me a cavity, and that was all made out of plaster of Paris. And then we just poured it full of Castilite, which is the material that you mix up to do paperweights. And so far it's held up pretty well. I was a little worried about the UV degradation, but this plane does not spend a lot of time outside. It's hangared. When the piece was pulled out of the mold, you just sand it a little bit and polish it up, and it became a nice little tail light that is shaped just like the body. So these kind of things are what make it take more than 1,000 hours to build a plane, though. This is a 50-hour light right here. If I had to do it over again, I would not put lights on this plane. I never fly at night, especially with a 582. I would not fly at night, and it seemed like the right thing to do at the time, but it added time, cost, and a little bit of weight and complexity. One of the other things I did a little bit different is I wanted a vertical card compass, and most of those compasses come mounted on a special bracket that is supported by foam. They say you're not supposed to hold it any harder than just like holding it in the palm of your hand. So I built a sub panel to put this compass in, and it's mounted on a block of foam. And so far, I have had no problems with the compass. Usually if they vibrate too much, the gears inside get beat up and they quit working. But that's just kind of another little kind of a fun thing you can do. Once again, it adds time, but I think that's kind of the attraction of building your own plane. You don't want something that looks or is like anybody else's plane. I try to keep everything simple. I've got just a basic fuel gauge here that is just a tube, clear polyurethane tube, and you don't have to worry about senders hanging up or anything like that. It's just if the fuel's in the tube, you got fuel. And I also calibrated it for on the ground and the air so I can always check my fuel levels. But it's a basic layout. Unfortunately, if I had to do it over again, I would do a lot more electronic digital equipment. It's kind of funny, I'm building a new high-tech plane, but I just got through learning in a 172 that was built in 1967. So of course I built myself an antique panel to go in this plane and didn't really realize it until all this electronic stuff started coming out. And you could sweep up all these instruments probably into 2 little digital displays for about half the cost, you know, and it'd be a lot easier to read and a lot easier to maintain. But too late for that now. It's a lot of work to change it. Okay, I'm going to pull the cowling off and see if all my parts are still here after my 650 miles. The cowling is held on with a few screws, pretty simple to remove. And for people that first see the 582 installed in this plane, they're pretty shocked at how little there is here. You know, this is about the size of a sewing machine and probably one doesn't weigh very much more. For 2 cylinders and 2-stroke, 65 horsepower, it's a pretty amazing little motor. It develops its power at about 7,500 RPMs, and no, 6,800, I'm sorry. And we normally cruise about 6,000 RPMs. When I first started running this thing, 5,000 seemed way too fast because I have a small block Chevy and I know it'll do 5, so that's all I was going to do. Well, the motor just didn't run fast enough to run smooth, and the plane ran slow. And my exhaust temperatures were too low. And started to talk to Eric Tucker, and he says, oh, you got to run that motor faster. And finally got the nerve to run it up to 6,000, and it almost gets turbine smooth at that point. You know, it really starts to run. It's a pretty basic little installation. We've got some Ford Econoline van heater cores, which is our radiators. And during the wintertime, it's really more cooling than you need. This has electric start. You have to build your exhaust system, doing a few welds, kind of custom fitting it in.
This is the bed mount that holds the engine to the body so the engine won't fly out of the body.
The motor sits on what we call a bed mount. The lower cowling is actually a structural member, and it has uniglass struts that are built back into the fuselage to support the entire weight, and then you bond in a cross member that's a steel cross member, and then the motor just beds down into that. What's real nice about that is when you're building the plane is level, you have your motor hanging on a hook, you have the mount bolted to your motor, and you just lower it in, and you get the spinner to line up straight with your lower cowl, and then you just make sure everything's square, and then you just start tack gluing stuff in, and then you just start doing your layups, and then once you got enough layups to make it permanent, and you pull the motor out and continue to doing your layups. It makes it pretty nice to build. Maintenance on these things is pretty easy. You gotta make sure you have oil in your rotary valve chamber. The gearbox is up front here, just runs normal gear oil, and you have to keep checking that occasionally. I made up a little dipstick out of a nylon zip tie that I can snake down beyond the gear and check the gear level all the time. Otherwise, you have to pull some plugs that are kind of hard to get to, and that makes it where you don't want to check them too often. Look at your battery to see if it's still there. There's really not a lot of things to look at other than places that you start to realize vibrate. And because these motors turn such high RPMs, if you have anything that's vibrating and chafing, it will wear through very quickly. And so a lot of things are mounted in rubber mounts, and they're very flexible. You know, this whole motor just jumps around inside there, so you got to make sure everything is jumping around with it. This is the water fill place, and this tends to be one of the areas that tends to vibrate a little bit. It could probably be done a little bit differently. Overflow water bottle, you check that, make sure that's tight. Your muffler mounts are something you're always checking, and I've done some work to try to improve these things a little bit by insulating them a little better. The muffler sits pretty loosely in there. It's got a flex joint here, so it allows the muffler to vibrate differentially, so you don't wear it out all the time. And you just kind of check your wires and cables and hoses and all that sort of stuff to make sure it's still all there. Your valve oil, I'm going to have to add a little bit to it. It's gone down since we've come, but that's just a normal consumption item. People are usually pretty amazed when they see one of these the first time. They go, God, is that all there is in there? Yeah, that's about it. The propeller that came with this kit is a GSC ground adjustable. It's a wooden prop, and it's has a split aluminum hub inside that allows you to loosen the hub up and roll the propeller blades. Two strokes are very critical on propeller pitch. If you have too much pitch, the motor will load up and it'll never get up to its RPM where it can develop horsepower. And I did have a couple occasions where I thought I had carburetor problems, and I took off and I was only getting about 4,000 RPMs and about 300 feet a minute climb. Now if you fly Cub, that sounds pretty good for the summertime, but this thing normally goes up around 1,200 feet per minute, and scared the hell out of me. But I landed and I called Mark Brown, and he said, well, it sounds like your prop is wrong. 1 degree change in the pitch of this prop was all it took to bring my RPM up and make it run. And it's amazing how sensitive it is. I've got a little gauge that I use to check my prop pitches. When you buy a GSC prop, you do get a gauge to check it, but it's a little bit difficult to use, so we've modified it a little bit. One of the things they don't tell you is where you measure your prop pitch, and you're supposed to measure at the 75% diameter. So I've cut a wood pattern that matches the wood blade that'll only slide onto 75. So we'll go over here and check this blade here. You slide this gauge on, you move this little card until your bubble levels up, then it'll stay that way. Then I'll slide the gauge off, I'll roll the prop blade and I'll slide it on the other blade. Then I can tell if they're both in. If the blades are more than about 3/4 of a degree off from each other, you'll get vibration. And it's pretty hard to adjust them to get them just right when you tighten the bolts down, but after a little while you kind of learn the technique. And some people change the blades for winter and summertime, but I just pretty much keep it the same. I've stopped messing with it. I like the way the plane performs now, and I'm not going to do anything else to it.
Jim seems to me like the kind of guy who is no nonsense and straight to the point. Usually those are the guys who give you the data you need. Jim Schmidt of Evansville, Indiana.
I brought my airplane in that I built, and I've got about 800 hours on it now. And I really enjoy building it and flying it. It's a good all-around average airplane. It doesn't do any one thing real well, but it does a little bit of everything pretty good. I've had many different airplanes before. I've had high-performance airplanes. I've had ultralights. And when I decided I wanted to build an airplane, I started looking around, and I liked the Pulsar because of the simplicity of it, and I just thought it was something that I could build, and it was a good project. It was a good first-time builder's project. And I really enjoy the handling characteristics of the airplane. Like I say, it's not super quick. It's not an aerobatic airplane, but it's not quite an ultralight either. If you're an ultralight pilot, you're going to find it more sensitive than a normal airplane would be. I work in the tool shop trade. I'm a mold builder, injection molding machinery. I work with my hands, have all my life, and I enjoy building things and stuff like that. I get started on something, I just can't wait to get the thing going, you know. First airplane I built, it's the 10th one I've owned. I started out in a 7AC Champ, learning how to fly, and finished up in a Cessna 150, so I started out in a Taildragger. Then the first airplane I owned was a Baby Ace, a little single-seat home-built airplane, simple, fun little flying airplane. Then I got a Cessna 120, which I flew for a couple years. And then I got into the home-built market, and I had a Quickie, which is one of these little single-seat kind of staggered biplane type airplanes. Had a little Onan generator engine in it for a power plant, and I flew that for a couple years, or 400 hours. And that was probably my most favorite airplane, it's a Quickie. From there I had a Stitz Playboy. I owned half of a 7BC Champ. Then I had a Midget Mustang, and I traded a Midget Mustang for a Cassett Racer. And then I finally, I had a Laser Ultralight, which I did build and fly. And then after the last Cassett Racer, I decided I wanted to build an airplane, so I started looking around, and I decided Pulsar. I really liked it. It wasn't fast, but it wasn't slow. It was two-place, so I had more room. And it was fairly easy to build and fly, and it was really a good case, a good airplane. I really enjoy composite. In fact, if I build again, I kind of want to build another composite airplane. I think that's the simplest and the best. The only downfall is a little bit more expensive to build it with composite than it is with wood or metal or something like that. But I really enjoyed the composite. You don't have to be a ace pilot or anything. If you can fly a Cessna 150 or some kind of little Piper, you won't have any trouble flying a Pulsar. They're a simple, easy to fly airplane. That was the reason I picked it. For the building was easy and the flying of it was easy. And for a two-place airplane, it runs 125 mile an hour on the 65 horse engine, which is really good economy. I thought it was fairly easy. I stuck with it. They claimed it'd take 1,000 hours to build it, and I spent $1,200 on it. I was pretty serious about it. It was 2 years. It took me 2 years to build it in that period. And I thought, you know, that's what I liked about it. Some of the other airplanes, composites, take 2 or 3 times that amount of hours to build. And I didn't think I could stick with them that long. 1,200 hours or a couple years I could stick with. I've got 830 hours on the 582 engines. This is the original engine. And I've never had any trouble with them. They've been always reliable. And I just can't really myself think of putting something else in there. For this light airframe, it's the perfect power plant. I really suggest to people that if they go to the big air shows and stuff like that, to try to get a ride in the airplane they think they want to build. Know what your airplane is going to be like when you get done with it. And I would really recommend if you fly somebody else's airplane or get a ride in someone else's airplane that you want to build. And if you can, go somewhere where somebody's halfway done through the building process and talk to them and look that project over. That's what I did before I started on mine. And after I did that, I went right home and ordered the kit. Most of the other airplanes I owned were more high-performance airplanes. This is a little bit closer to a production taildragger type of airplane. Maybe a Swift, I would say it'd be close to it. Anybody could build one of these airplanes. The plans and instructions are very good. They're very simple, but it was a simple airplane to build. And there's a lot of people around that in the Pulsar group and the EAA and stuff like that where you can get a lot of good information that really I didn't even have when I built my airplane. What's so nice now is the internet, where you can get on the internet and just ask a question and you'll get 15 answers. I started out flying taildraggers, and I love flying the taildraggers. The takeoff and landings, it takes a little bit more challenge there, especially in this wind like today. And when Pulsar came out with the taildragger version of it, I think the long nose and sleek looks, I really liked the look of it when they made a taildragger out of it. I drove over to a fellow that had a tricycle gear, and we flew in it down to another guy that was building one. And that's kind of how I got my real introduction to him. And I liked everything about it except the tricycle gear. When they came out with the taildragger version, I had to have that. The tricycle gear, they say, is maybe 4 or 5 mile an hour slower because of the front nose strut. But other than that, in the air, they fly exactly the same.
Solly Million is the owner of the Pulsar factory. He had just flown in from El Monte, California to show off his new Super Pulsar. Meet Solly Million.
My name is Solly Million. I'm the president of Pulsar Aircraft Corporation. And you see here the latest version of the Pulsar aircraft line, which is called the Super Pulsar 100. It's a takeoff design over from the legendary Pulsar XP and the Pulsar 3 line. And the design has a mission of not only providing you with a sport flying fun that all of us like to do on Sunday afternoons, but also to carry you on a cross-country flight over long distances at a fairly high speed of 200 miles an hour on a budget. We're looking at a fuel burn of 5 to 6 gallons an hour, and couple that with a comfort level that is really unmatched in the industry for airplane that size. You would simply get a combination of an excellent performing aircraft for both missions. The reason for building an aircraft rather than purchasing a certified airplane such as a Cessna 150 or 172, there are several reasons for that. One of them is first the way the aircraft perform. Home-built or amateur-built airplanes simply deliver a lot more performance, a lot more excitement, and owners could find that they're saving quite a bit of money obtaining higher performance for less cost. The Super Pulsar, based on our experience with the previous models, was designed to be a very simple airplane to build and take the least amount of hours. This project should take a reasonably, an average builder, so to speak, without prior experience in building airplanes, no more than 600 hours to build. It is also a very simple project, and it flows much like a model airplane. All the parts are pre-molded for you. The builder does not have to create or fabricate any parts. The kit contains all the parts, and it's simply bonding the parts together. That is a very doable or very easy task on any builder. The Super Pulsar 100 is designed to cruise at close to 200 miles an hour at 10,000 feet comfortably and climb between 1,000 to 2,000 feet per minute, depending on what kind of a propeller you have. Another improvement that we decided to add was to widen the engine choice for the Pulsar, whereas previously the Pulsar would be fitted only with the Rotax liquid-cooled. We wanted the builders to be able to fit the airplane with air-cooled aircraft engines or the Rotax. They can go both ways. And so now, for example, the company's demo airplane, it's equipped with a Continental IO 240 fuel-injected air-cooled, which is a certified engine. However, we offer various other engines, such as the Aeromax, made in Germany, which is also an air-cooled engine, delivering about 118 horsepower, and the Jabiru, made in Australia, which is also an air-cooled engine and delivers 100 horsepower. You can also equip it with the Rotax engines, which deliver between 80 horsepower to 100 horsepower, 105 horsepower. Obviously, when you look at the new Super Pulsar 100, you could see that there are some changes from the previous design, the Pulsar XP. With the primary change would be the cabin width. In order to provide a higher comfort level, the cabin had been widened to be 43-inch at the shoulder area, and we gave it more headroom in order to accommodate tall and large pilots. The airplane is designed to accommodate pilots up to 6 foot 4 inches in height and fairly heavy. The aircraft had retained the same sporty feeling or flight characteristics of the older Pulsars. It is very responsive, yet very safe in the pattern for landing. It's definitely not a hot rod in the landing pattern, but it will carry you at speeds of 200 miles an hour cross-country at altitude of 10,000, 15,000 feet. Other changes that were made that are not obvious are structural changes. The wings now feature carbon fiber spar caps, and that is due to an increase in the payload or in the gross weight of the airplane, which is now set at 1,400 pounds as opposed to 1,200 pounds on the older design. Well, one of the missions around which the Super Pulsar was designed was to carry a pilot and a passenger on a long cross-country flight with a high degree of comfort level and ease. And we obtained that by rearranging the tail feathers in such a manner that made the Super Pulsar 100 extremely stable in flight. Matter of fact, I'm flying it from Los Angeles to Florida, and I'm better off just letting the stick alone, because if I touch the stick, I'm upsetting the aircraft. I found out that the aircraft flies a lot better when I just let it do what it's supposed to do. The canopy hinges forward in that manner, or the builder has an option of hinging it aft this way, much like you see on fighter aircrafts. The bubble canopy provides the pilot and passenger with excellent visibility, and it's real easy to operate and close. Gives you plenty of headroom. Many factors come into play when a builder needs to decide what airplane to purchase, because there are many kits offered out there on the market. At Pulsar Aircraft, we wanted to provide builders with absolutely the best airplane that they could find, the best value for the money. And if I can list the various factors that come into play beside price, we're looking at time to build the aircraft, how simple it is to build it, the performance package that it provides you, economy of operation, maintenance, accessibility into all the aircraft systems. As you can see, one could work on the instrument panel by standing right outside of the aircraft. Accessibility to the brakes and rudder pedals is done through the access hatch right on the front, on top of the front panel. When you buy a Pulsar aircraft, what you get is obviously the best looking aircraft in the industry today, coupled with the best price, performance, safety package that you can obtain in a kit aircraft.
Max's career has been in the heavy metal side of the aircraft business, but now he seems to really be enjoying the light side of the aircraft spectrum. Max Parkhurst of Wichita, Kansas.
Okay, this is the original Pulsar with the 582 engine, designed by Mark Brown down at Aero Designs. Basically designed to be an affordable, high-performance airplane that you could afford to own and could build. One of the main reasons that I chose this kit was because everything was in the kit. I didn't have to go shopping around over the United States trying to find all the parts that I was not familiar with. And the documentation was good. Airplane went together very well. Follow the manual, do it page by page, and you really had no problems. It's 64 horsepower, Rotex 582 for power, and it'll cruise at about 130. This is miles, not knots. I burn about 4 gallons an hour, so it's a very affordable airplane. This was my first project of this type. I retired from Boeing in 1993, and I thought about this for a year and finally decided, yes, I can do that. So I bought the kit. It took me 3.5 years, but it was my first experience at building this, but not difficult. After I practiced a little bit doing composites and epoxy, why, it worked very well. For building an airplane of this type, basic skills required are just any basic mechanical skills. If you're a handyman of any type and follow the manual, do it page by page, call them when you've got questions, there's no problem. It's really quite easy to build. You start out with small items and practice, and as soon as you understand what this fiberglassing and epoxy is all about, why, it goes very smoothly from there on. I've flown other aircraft, mostly as rental. I learned to fly in a Cherokee 140 and have since flown Cessna 150s. There's not a real direct comparison between the two. This one flies so much better. It is so much solider, so much more responsive, so much cleaner. One of the first things you learn is speed control. And it's, I think, superior to any of the commercially built airplanes. As far as being a handyman, yes, I have usually repaired my own things. Worked at Boeing for 30-some years in a test group, so yeah, I do have experience with tools and building things, some structural knowledge. It was not a requirement for this. Following the manual and doing it page by page really works very well. Primary use for this airplane is pure pleasure. I don't really have any place that I want to go in an airplane and then not have a car when I get there. I use it mostly just for pleasure. It's a fun airplane to fly. My wife and I love to sightsee, and so most of our flights have been relatively short and in the local Kansas area, and it's simply a pleasure craft. Well, as far as keeping this engine, I probably will. There are several other options available that I could put in this airplane, and it's called experimental for that very reason. You get it built and you say, yeah, that works, and then look at this, maybe I should try that. And so you try different things, hang different things on it. Some of the guys have changed the engines in it, and they're in the experimental phase now trying to get it all ironed out. I will probably keep this one because it's finished, it's flies good, the Rotax is a good engine. I've had no problems whatsoever with it. It's very cheap to run, very basic in its operation. Haven't got any problems with it. This airplane is built as a day VFR airplane. I do have navigation lights on it. I don't have any landing lights. My instrument panel isn't even fully illuminated. There's probably no problem with making it full IFR except for cost. And as anybody that's been dealing with airplanes knows, you can put an endless amount of money into it and do whatever you want. It's a good stable platform. It would be fine at night. The only drawback to doing that, probably with this engine, I have a limited amount of electrical power. And to put landing lights and an extensive amount of radio equipment in there, I'd be running a little short of electrical power. The panel basically is simple. The only thing I've added over what the kit supplied was a turn coordinator. I do have a handheld transmitter receiver that's wired into the aircraft antenna and to the aircraft bus. I've got a handheld GPS that's mounted on the panel and tied into the aircraft bus. Basically, it's a basic airplane, but I have good reception, good range on the transmitter. Of course, GPS works fine in a bubble canopy like this. I don't have to have any external antenna on that. But basically, I built it according to the manual, according to the kit. And that's what makes it affordable and doable. It's a good design. There are things that I would do differently if I were building it. For one thing, I'd put electric flaps on it. This one has a manual flap, and at 80 miles an hour, it's a pretty good pull to get the last notch of flaps. And there is some airplanes flying now with electric flaps on them. It's quite easy to do if I were doing it when I was building it. And one of the things that I've always wished I had was a steerable nose wheel, but that's not a practical thing for this airplane. This is a cast-ring nose wheel, and in October, when I landed here in a 35-knot quartering crosswind, it was a little busy. The airplane has a GSC ground-adjustable wooden prop. You can set the pitch on the prop to suit your particular purposes. I've got this one set at about 23 degrees, which gives me a good cruise and really a pretty good climb out. Solo, I can run 1,400 feet per minute very easily, and I get about 130 mile an hour cruise out of it. I've got 16 gallons of usable fuel in it, and I, as a general rule, burn around 4 gallons an hour, which is a little bit more than what you want to sit still in an airplane. One of the biggest jobs in building a home-built airplane, especially composite like this, is the paint job. If you're not a painter, it can be a rather daunting task. It's made of fiberglass. Fiberglass has pinholes, and there's a lot of work filling those pinholes, and a lot of the sanding. And then when we got to the time of shooting the coat of paint, I shot the first coat, and then I had a friend help me on the second coat who was more experienced in painting, because it can be quite a job. And painting, what you run into is runs, dull spots, shiny spots, thick spots, and thin spots. It takes a bit of practice. And at $200 a gallon, you don't feel like practicing a great deal. I guess I'm a cheapskate. The reason I went with a tricycle gear airplane is because I've got most of my flying time on a tricycle gear. And in Kansas, with the winds that we do have, it's a little bit easier airplane to land. And basically it was for experience purposes. I've only got about 10 hours tail wheel time, and the rest of my time has all been with tricycle gear. So it was a logical choice for me. As far as performance is concerned on the different landing gears, there's maybe 3 to 5 mile an hour difference depending on the airplane. Weight has more to do with it than the landing gear configuration. The reason that you see a white airplane all over the field here is that the problem with the epoxies is the seam on the top of the fuselage is a builder joined seam. And the seam on the top of the wing, along the spar, and along the trailing edge are all seams that we as builders have done, and so it has been a room temperature cure. The temperature of this airplane in the hot sun on a summer day is going to be considerably cooler than any of the dark colors. The parts that the manufacturer gave us as far as molded fiberglass parts have been autoclaved and are good for high temperature. The seams that we do are room temperature cure, and the first time they get real hot, they will tend to soften just a little bit. So the seams on your spars and the top of the airplane are the ones that you want to keep as cool as possible, and the white airplane doesn't.
When my son Jack and I showed up at the Pulsar fly-in, I immediately started asking around to see who I could interview. More than one person said that I really needed to talk to Larry Eubanks if I wanted to know about the Pulsar. I think he has built more of them than any of the other kit builders, and he really has some important observations.
I've been flying now for about 12 years, and most of that time has been in a Pulsar. I've now built 2 of the airplanes, and actually I built one from scratch, complete till it was done, and this one I bought as a completed kit, and spent about 300 hours rebuilding the plane. I like the Pulsar because it's probably the best dollar value out there for performance and looks. You can fly this plane at 150 miles an hour and use 4 gallons an hour of fuel. Hardly any maintenance, and it's just such a delight to fly. It's easy on the controls, and it just flies where you point it. It's a good plane. I've got 2 that are done and one that's under construction at home. So I've actually been involved with 3 Pulsars now. I've helped some other folks do some work on some Pulsars too, and they're a good plane to work on. You have to like building a plane. There are a lot of tedious jobs in it, just like anything would be. The canopy takes a little time to do, and some folks have a little trouble with canopies. I've never had that much trouble with them myself, but you can plan on spending 1,200 to 1,400 hours on the airplane. Obviously, a lot of that has to do with what kind of a plane that you want to end up with. You want one that just looks okay and want to fly, well, you can probably do it for 1,000 hours. If you want something that really looks great, it's going to be 1,400 to 1,500 hours. The better the plane looks, the more hours you're going to have in the plane. Each plane that I've been involved with so far has been a different kind of plane. The first plane I built was a 2-stroke powered plane. It would fly at 130 cruise, and that's miles per hour, and use 4 gallons an hour to do that. This plane that I'm flying here now is a 912 XP, and it'll also do 4 gallons an hour, but it gives me 150 cruise and 1,200 to 1,300 feet a minute climb most of the time. The next plane that I'm building is a Taildragger, and the only difference between it and the other 2 is the fact that it is a Taildragger, plus it's going to have a Jabiru 80 horsepower Australian engine in the plane. The Rotax is a great engine. I have nothing wrong with the Rotax. I've had a lot of good luck with the engine in this plane, but the Jabiru is going to cost me a little bit less to put in for the same horsepower. The finishing process takes quite a bit of time to do compared to the building of the plane. about the time you think you're 90% done, why you've still got 90% to go, and a lot of that's in making it look nice. You know, you think you got a plane that's ready to fly and ready to paint, and it's smooth, no nicks, no pinholes left in it, and you start doing primer work and shining the lights on it, trying to make it look good, and it's surprising how much you find that you didn't think was there prior to painting the plane. So in some cases you got to go back and redo a lot of the work that you thought was perfect to begin with. I do quite a bit of cross-country work. I fly to Idaho and visit relatives quite often from Kansas. That's about 900 miles as the crow flies, and about 1,400 as I fly. Probably the most fun part is just going out on early on a Sunday morning and going up and just flying at 120 miles an hour or so and just kind of cruising around and looking. It's a lot of fun. The only other aircraft I've flown was I flew a Grumman Tiger for a few hours, maybe 6 hours, to get used to the transition from a Cessna 152, which is what I got my license in. They do fly a whole lot different than the Pulsars. Performance-wise, the Pulsar can fly circles around the trainer type planes. As far as my flight experience, I've got probably 800 hours, and probably of the 800 hours, 750 of it is in a Pulsar. Probably the biggest difference is fuel economy, and just it's easier to handle this airplane. It's just a lot more speed and economy for the money compared to those planes. Kind of the difference between a sports car and a Cadillac, I suppose, would be what it is. This would be the sports car end of it. It flies mainly by pressure rather than a lot of movement in the stick. We're talking about a 1/4 inch movement in the stick will do everything you want it to do. Also, another analogy would be flying like a jet plane. It points you point the stick and away you go. It goes where you point it. This is the 912 Rotax engine. It's an 80 horsepower engine, and it's partly water cooled and partly oil cooled. It takes 2 carburetors to run the engine. It's got dual ignition and dual carburetors. It's got all the works of the big boys planes in here, gaskelators, the whole bit, dual ignition. It's a very dependable engine. It does have a gearbox on it to change the prop speeds, because actually the engine itself is a high RPM engine. We're talking 5,600 RPM cruise on the thing, and obviously you can't run a prop at 5,600 RPM, so there's a gearbox in there that slows it down by 2.2 to 1 ratio. I have to say I am a little bit mechanically inclined. I've been playing with things all my life. I started out racing motorcycles and working on those, and actually built a couple of motorcycles from basket cases, and got into racing next, and then converted the race car over to a street rod after that. Then built a street rod. I've got a 29 Model A at home yet, and it's got all the works in it, air conditioning, power steering, brakes, the whole bit. So, and I built it all myself. Next I built my house, and when I got the house done, what's next? So decided it had to be an airplane next. So I built the airplane and got it done, and somebody wanted it, so I built another one after buying. I actually built an airplane that had been built by someone else and remodeled that plane. So now I'm on a third airplane at home, and when I decided to build that airplane, the first thing my wife said was, "Okay, what toy are you going to sell next?" So to make room for that, I had to sell this plane, but at least I don't have to sell it until the other plane is done. Anybody that doesn't have the experience of building an airplane before, think over real careful what you're going to start. Make sure you can dedicate the kind of time it takes, because you have to give up a lot of things to build an airplane when you're done with it. You've got anywhere from 1,000 to 1,400 hours in the plane, and some of the bigger planes you may have 2,000 to 3,000 hours in the plane. You're going to give up a lot of personal time to do that. You have to make sure that that's what you really want to do before you build the plane. If you're good at following directions, a lot of planes can be built kind of like a cookbook. You get, with this plane, for example, you get a lot of books that pretty well tell you everything there is to know about what to do and when to do it. As long as you can follow those instructions, you're fine. If you can't follow those instructions, well, then you might be better off building something else instead of a car or instead of an airplane to start with. Remember what you're putting together here is not something that if the motor quits, you can just pull off to the side of the road and fix it. You're going to be up in the air, and you're going to be looking for a place to put it. So you want to make sure that you've built that plane to where it'll hold up. Okay, this engine is mounted inside the cowling itself. It's something called a bed mount. There are several different versions of that, depending on who owned the company and who the designer was on the engine. When SkyStar took it over from the folks down in Aero Designs in Texas, they changed it from a bed mount to a tubular mount. So the mount is actually now currently on the firewall. The engine is hung off the firewall. Where this one is sitting down on a bed mount in the bottom of the cowling. And the cowling is actually a structural part of the aircraft. Excellent engine. There's a lot of reliability to this engine. I wouldn't hesitate to jump in this plane today and fly it to California. The engine's easy to maintain. It gets you good fuel economy. I went to the Jabiru because it's going to cost me probably $2,000 less for a complete flying airplane than what I would have with the Rotax. The Rotax is several $1,000s higher than the Jabiru. There is a little more complexity to a Rotax too. You have to build radiators for both the oil cooling and the water cooling on it. Well, this is a standard VFR instrument panel. It's got a GPS built into the dash, and I've got a second GPS unit that's a portable that I fly with a lot. So actually I don't have much of an excuse to get lost, do I? It's got a stereo system in it, so while I'm flying I have the radio on or a tape deck playing. Lots of entertainment. When you go long distances, sometimes you get pretty bored in one of these things when you're up at altitude, and that helps a lot. I don't have an instrument rating, and I doubt that I'll get one. This type of airplane, I'd rather stay out of instrument conditions. They're a great flying airplane, but I would feel better in VFR conditions than instrument conditions with it. Now the rear lighting on the airplane is actually made from a test tube that I cut down the glass out of and fitted an automotive type light in it. It puts out all the lights that the standard aircraft type do, but I've got all of $1.50 in it, so it's a lot cheaper to install that. Yeah, I've had two of the Pulsars now, and the first one was a standard Pulsar with a 582 two-stroke engine in it, and this one has a 912, which gives it extra performance. That's where the XP comes from on the Pulsar name there. It's a Pulsar Extra Performance. And one of the things they have a little trouble with on these Pulsars is the fit and finish of the canopy. It's a little bit difficult to make everything line up right, get a good smooth fit here where you don't get a lot of air underneath the things, and to make it line up with the front of the airplane. With a little bit of extra effort, you can get it done, but it does require a little more skills maybe than that some people can put into one. We have a website for all the Pulsars called the Pulsar Builders Association, and anybody that's interested in building a Pulsar, I highly recommend if they have access to a computer, that they join the group. They can ask any question on there about anything on a Pulsar, and there's somebody there that will have the answer they need. It's been a tremendous boon even to us, those folks that have been building for a while. We've been flying for a while. Every now and then we forget something. So we'll get back on the internet and we'll say, hey, what do you think? Can I do this? And there'll be somebody there that knows.
We've got people on there that are engineers. We've got people on there that are composite experts. We've got people on there that seem to know a little bit about everything. And you get some good answers. You may not always get the same answer from everybody, but you'll get an answer you can use.
There are not too many women involved in aviation, but it sure seems like when they come around, they are special. Sonia is from Germany and is an engineer. She has made extensive modifications to her Pulsar, and everyone around the tarmac was pretty impressed with her work and ideas. Here is Sonia Englert of Englewood, Colorado.
I'm Sonia Englert, and this is my Pulsar. I'm an aeronautical engineer, and I've worked for a lot of years on small airplanes. I've helped building airplanes, and I know a lot about composite, so that's kind of my specialty. Well, I'm from Germany, and I worked in a lot of different places. Before I came here, I worked in Switzerland and Malaysia and a little bit in Germany. And then there were some interesting jobs in this country. At that time in Germany, there wasn't much going on in aviation, so I came over here and joined a company in Florida, modifying Moonis, doing STCs, engine conversions, and I was there for 5 years. It's a lot better to fly in this country because there's a lot less restrictions. You can take off and land at any airport, even if there's no one controlling the traffic like you have to in Germany. It's a lot less expensive. You don't have to pay landing fees on most airports. The fuel is much less expensive, and there are no borders close by. Like you have to fly in different countries in Europe because they're so small, and every time you have to land at a custom airport and go through customs. And here you can just fly for hours and hours and still be in the same country, and no one bothers you. The airports don't close really. You can land at any time of the day or night, and nobody cares. In Germany, if you're landing after the airport officially closes, they'll charge you a lot. They're building home builds in Europe as well, in Germany and France and all the other countries. It's more difficult for them there because they don't have something like we have here as experimental, that the builder takes all the responsibility and just builds it and gets it inspected once and flies it. In Germany, for example, you still have to go through a process that's similar to a simplified certification of a home build. You have to do some testing, some flight testing, structural testing, and verify that your airplane is safe. So it takes a lot more time and effort to do a home build in Germany, for example, than it does here. I've had it for 1 year now, and it's been really a fun airplane so far, although I've put a lot of work in it. I bought it in Montana 1 year ago, and I flew it back to Florida where I lived at that time. That was quite an exciting trip because things had to be fixed on the way, and I visited a lot of places. I flew first to Oregon, then down California, through Arizona and New Mexico and back to Florida. And when I got home, I took the plane apart. It used to have a nose wheel, and I took the nose wheel off and put a tail wheel on it, which is all my design. I had to move the main gear forward so that it wouldn't fall over, and that took quite a lot of work. Then I did some other things to it, like I installed a firewall. I modified the instrument panel and had not enough instruments in there. It needed a manifold pressure gauge because it has a controllable pitch prop. This one's in-flight adjustable. So I made a whole lot of changes to this airplane. Then one other thing I did is, you can see it better this way, modified the cowling, the inlets of it. They're much smaller than of other Pulsars. With this and the tail wheel conversion gave me a better speed. I'm about 5 to 8 knots faster now that I'm done with the modifications. When I decided to buy an airplane, I looked at several designs, and one of my criteria was it had to be, the wings had to be removable. On the Pulsar, it's fairly easy. You take out a few bolts out of the wing spars and disconnect a few lines and fittings, and then you can remove the wings. The other airplane I had looked at was a Mustang II, which is a side-by-side metal airplane, very similar to the Pulsar. Also, it has more horsepower. And at first I looked at several Mustangs, but I couldn't find a good one. So I ended up deciding, actually, I know more about composite airplanes, and this is what I ended up with. And you notice that horse on the tail, because it's not quite a Mustang, I decided it's a pony, and it needed a pony on the tail. I've flown a lot of Mooney, Piper Cub as Taildragger. I've flown a lot of gliders and motor gliders, and I would compare it the most to high-performance gliders because it's very sensitive on the controls, and it glides fairly well even with the engine off. It's a very clean airframe, and it's a lot more fun because you see much better out of this big canopy. It's also a lot like those gliders that I flew, where you sit in front of the wing and you have this big view of everything. That's just great on this plane. Well, the most hours in one type that I have are Mooney otherwise. And the Mooney has, of course, twice the horsepower and is a little faster, but it burns at least twice the fuel. So this one flies almost as fast as the Mooney on half the fuel burn. That's, of course, one thing I like very much. It's a Rotax 912, and it's got the high compression pistons. I've been fairly happy with this engine. It performs very well. It's running smooth. It uses very little gas and very little oil. And because it's a geared engine, the prop is turning fairly slow, so it's not very noisy. And also inside the cockpit is fairly quiet, this airplane. It's liquid cooled, so you're running it at lower temperatures than an air-cooled engine, which I think should increase the life of the engine also. The gear, when it still had the nose wheel, the main gear was much further aft, about back here. And in order to have sufficient load on the tail wheel, I had to move it forward. So I cut a slot in the fuselage down there, because it's one continuous piece, the whole gear. Took it out through the bottom. I had to cut another slot in the fuselage up front here and put it back in. I reinforced the fuselage inside the frame where the new gear mounting bracket mounts to. It's got two supports left and right that keep it from moving away. And then I put a fairing around the gear legs to streamline it. I closed the slot that I cut both forward and aft to get the structure back. Since I'm an engineer and I've got quite a bit of experience with composite, I designed this gear conversion and built it also myself. And it wasn't really difficult. The most difficult part was getting in there underneath the instrument panel, and there's very little space, the opening there to get in there, and trying to put the new gear fittings in that limited space. I looked at that gear and I decided there are a couple of things that I didn't like too much about it. One is the tail wheel is a little bit flimsier than the one that I put on, and I wanted the tail to be a little higher so that it has more ground clearance and that I have better visibility over the nose. So I angled the spring down further, and I'm really happy with that part. Then the other thing is the other Pulsars with the tail wheel have the main gear about 4 inches further aft, which means they have less load on the tail wheel, and when they brake, the airplane might come nose down. On this one, it doesn't do that. I can use full brakes as hard as I can, and it still stays with the tail on the ground. That's why And of course I had the most space there in front of the seat frame to put the main gear. It was convenient also. The fuel tanks are right here in the leading edge, and the fuel tank fittings are right aft of my main gear, so that doesn't interfere with this gear location. If I had tried to put it further aft, it would have interfered with the fuel tank. When I thought about making this into a Taildragger, I looked at the other Pulsar Taildraggers, and I noticed that the tail is really close to the ground and that their attitude is kind of steep, that when you're sitting in there, you're looking at the sky. So I decided I wanted my tail to be a little further off the ground so that I can see better and it's further away from any obstacles that might be there. So I took a Cessna 170 tail spring and a Matco tail wheel from Aircraft Spruce and mounted them together and jigged the tail up to where I wanted it to be, and that determined the angle that I wanted the tail wheel to be at. And I wanted it to be steerable also, so I hooked these chains to the rudder actuation in there so that I move this, the tail wheel moves. Makes it much easier to control the airplane on the ground. Let me say something about the ground handling with this gear. I'm very happy with this because the tail wheel is steerable now. The nose wheel was not steerable, and especially in a crosswind you have to stand on one brake to keep taxiing straight. Now I just use the rudder pedals to steer it, which is much easier, I think. For takeoff, I try to keep the tail wheel on the ground because the attitude of the airplane is exactly the takeoff attitude. I try not to let it come up. It does want to come up, but if I keep it on the ground, I have better control and it takes off and climbs right out at the right speed and right attitude. I modified this cowling a little bit also because I noticed that the original cowlings are very large. Their openings are down here and up here, and that's a lot of drag, and really all that air that would want to go in there is not able to go in there. It just spills out again. So I've done this on a few other airplanes too, modified the cowlings, made the inlet smaller to reduce the drag and still maintain the engine cooling. So I brought this down a little further and I brought this edge up and I rounded it out and built a diffuser on the inside to slow the air down that's coming in and build up the pressure inside. So this saved me quite a bit of drag, I think, and that's one reason why it's faster now. And let me take the cowling off and then you can see on the inside what it looks like. I also did a few things in the engine compartment. First of all, I made the cowling easier to remove with quick turn fasteners instead of screws. Then you can see my inlet modification. I extended the lid here that reduces the drag. I wrapped the exhaust with this fiberglass wrapping to keep the heat inside the exhaust and not the engine compartment. I installed a stainless steel firewall on this airplane because the original firewall is not really a firewall. It's just composite and it would burn. So I feel much safer having a piece of steel there. I had to remove everything from the engine compartment except the engine itself to have enough access to put the firewall in. I also swapped the radiator. I had a large radiator in there originally, and because the firewall moved it a little bit further forward, it didn't fit anymore, so I had to put a small Rotex radiator in it. And I must say, there's nothing wrong with that. The engine runs still cool enough. So, and it's lighter. It saved me a few pounds, which I put in the firewall, of course, so in the end, it's probably still heavier than before. When I designed those inlets, first of all, I had to make sure that it doesn't interfere with the engine itself. So I tried to keep it clear of the exhaust. For example, I made a little bulge around the fuel pump, which sticks out beyond the area of the spinner here. I had to make some pieces removable so that I can get to the oil sensor probes, for example, and on the other side to the oil filter. And basically, I eyeballed the size of the inlets. I made it look nice. That's one objective, and then I was fairly confident that the size would be right because I had done a similar modification on another airplane, and it usually isn't all that critical, the size. It's more critical how you smooth the airflow inside the cowling, and that's why I extended the lips here instead of having them cut off right there as they are on the standard Pulsar cowling. The air goes turbulent over that edge and doesn't flow very well through the engine compartment. So it's kind of a bit of eyeballing and experience with other airplanes where I measure temperatures on the engine and climb. Climb is the critical case. You need to get enough air through the engine there. And it worked out pretty well. It's the same temperature as it is before with the large openings and the large radiator. Ideally, you would size the inlets so that at your climb speed you have exactly the air going through that inlet at the speed you're flying, and at any higher speed air would start spilling out because it can't flow fast enough through the radiator. But at climb you want to have the maximum airflow, so that's what you size the inlets for. Of course, it's a bit of guesswork to know how much air it needs at climb. Some engine manufacturers give you numbers, but on this one I really had to guess. There is no numbers available. Unfortunately, I did both changes at the same time, and I measured the performance before with the large cowling inlets and with the nose gear, and then I measured it again with the smaller inlets and the tail wheel. So I can only say that both together resulted in a speed increase between 5 and 9 knots, depending on the power settings. So that's pretty good. I cleaned up the airframe in some other areas too, and had a huge wing walk, and I recessed the fuel tank drain fittings that were sticking out like this far. Now they're almost flush. So I did a few little other things to it that cleaned it up, but the main changes were the cowling and the tail wheel. And I still want to put a fairing on the tail wheel that I haven't done yet. I haven't had a chance. This engine is a Rotax 912. The previous owner installed high compression pistons, so it's similar to the 912S, although it's not quite the same. The 912S has a few different features. It has a different gear reduction, but it doesn't make much difference. So I should have 95 horsepower on this engine. Yeah, I've flown with Lycoming and Continental engines and also Volkswagen engine. And what I really like about this is the electronic ignition. It makes the engine start really well. It's like you turn the switch and boom, it runs. And other than that, I like that it's a geared engine. It makes it quieter. The prop is turning slower than the engine is running. And that way also the engine size can be kept smaller because it runs at a higher RPM. It seems like the ignition is fairly reliable. It's got a separate circuit from the generator that doesn't even go to the airplane bus first. It's got a separate cable to the ignition, so that even if you lose your electricity in the airplane, the ignition would still get power from the generator. It's got dual spark plugs per cylinder, so that's the redundancy there. There are two of these ignition boxes. One fires one half of the spark plugs and the other one for the other half of the spark plugs. So I think it's more reliable than a magneto. I've had a problem with a magneto failure, but I have not had a problem with this electronic ignition. The Pulsar, first of all, is a very efficient plane. It burns very little gas and it's going really fast for the horsepower that it has installed. It's fairly small in size, so you can squeeze it somewhere in a hangar in a corner. It's easy to fly. Even low-time pilots shouldn't have trouble with it. Actually, the previous owner I bought this from was a student pilot when he bought it, and he flew it as a student. And also, when I got my insurance for this plane, the insurance told me that they had such a good record, accident record, these Pulsars, that the rate is fairly low on the insurance. So they seem to be pretty safe airplanes, easy to fly, performing very well. And it's just a fun cross-country airplane. You have great visibility in it. and I can only recommend it to anyone.
Every time I see the picture in the open of this video with Jerry pulling his Pulsar, I just spontaneously grin. He seems like the kind of guy that you like to have around. He also knows his Pulsar, as you will soon find out.
I was looking for speed and economy, and this thing pretty much gives you that. We can cruise at 150 miles an hour at 5 gallons an hour, and this particular plane holds 29 gallons of gas, so I could pretty routinely go non-stop to Chicago from Washington or down to Florida from Washington. So it's a pretty economical cruiser. It's pretty straightforward. The manual is easy to understand. It's an all fiberglass airplane. The fuselage comes in 2 halves split the long way, and you put that together. And then you have to build on the cowlings, mount the engine, build the instrument panel, sand and paint. You have to build the wings. It's a pretty easy thing to do. It's just time consuming. I'm pretty experienced. I've built several airplanes. This is the first, well, the gyro was all fiberglass, so this is really the second fiberglass thing that I built. I think what it takes is patience, tenacity. You know, if you have to stay with it. You know, so many people get a kit, it looks like a lot, they work on it about a year and they give up. And you have to just decide that you're gonna stay with it so that you get the reward at the end. I have a construction business in the Washington, D.C. area, so I work with my hands most of the time. So this is just kind of an extension of that. I built a Kit Fox, you know, a SkyStar Kit Fox, which is a wonderful 2-place, go slow, land anywhere airplane. And I built a Sky Raider, which was the ultralight version almost of a Kit Fox. And I built the auto gyro. And I've been in on several ultralights, you know, that we built, Quicksilvers and Rands, the S-14 and the Phantoms, which is an ultralight, which are wonderful planes to have if you just want to go slow and fly around. And after we've all done that for a while, we want to get into something that's faster so we can go somewhere. The stock engine that came with this airplane is an 80 horsepower, the Rotax 912. And what I did was I developed a piston that you put in it. It's really just a high compression racing piston. It raises the compression from 9 to 10.5 to 1 and gives you about another 15 horsepower, which, you know, there's no such thing as an airplane with too much power. So we're always looking for more. And so I developed this kit, and the guys are liking it. Saves them from having to buy the next up engine, which is about a $10,000 engine. All right, tell you what, why don't I take this off so we can get a look at the engine so we can see how easy it is to put in. This is the stock ultralight version of the 912, the Rotax 912 engine. It comes stock 80 horsepower. It's a 4-cylinder, horizontally opposed, 4-stroke engine. The cylinders are air-cooled and the head is water-cooled, so there's a radiator down in the back. And you know, it's got also an oil cooler. This is the oil tank right here. It's got dual carburetors. This engine has to run at 5,400 RPM when you're cruising. Well, you can't turn a propeller that fast, so it's got a gearbox to slow the prop down. So on that, we also have the vacuum pump that drives some of the instruments in the plane. And then this particular plane also has a cockpit adjustable prop, so as we speed up, we can put more pitch into the prop. Originally with the kit comes a ground adjustable prop, and what that means is if you want to put more pitch in the prop, you have to land, get out, undo some bolts, put a little more pitch in the blade, tighten it all up, take off again and see if that's enough. This particular prop, I can change the pitch of it while I'm flying. And if you look at it closer, you can see I can even move the blades now to show that's how much more pitch I can put in the blade while I'm in the air. And I can do that from inside the cockpit while I'm flying. It's just, as you speed up, more air is going into the prop,
so it bites more air, so you need to put more pitch into it so it bites further into the air as you're going. Otherwise, the engine will speed up and get going too fast. It can only go up to 5,800. And we want to cruise it at 5,400, so as we get going faster, we put more pitch in it, and it keeps the engine down to a reasonable speed. It's a mechanical lever. I've got a lever up here on the top, and as I pull a lever inside, it makes this lever push a rod through the center of the gearbox that pushes on a bearing that has a lever inside the hub of this, and as it pushes it in, it makes more pitch happen to the blade. When you're doing a hydraulically controlled prop, then you got to have a pump up here to run the hydraulics, and you know, there's a lot of hoses involved, and so it just adds weight to the airplane. And this is pretty simple here. You know, a lever, not too much to break. The stock engine is 80 horsepower. It comes with a concave piston in it that gives it a 9-to-1 compression ratio, and because it's concave, that gives you some room to compress that air a little more if you put a flat piston in there. What you can do is there are a lot of piston manufacturers in the United States that'll work with you. So what I did, a friend of mine, when I went to this couple of manufacturers and said, you know, we'd like to raise the compression, put a racing piston in it, see if we can get a little more horsepower out of it. And that's what happens. The piston manufacturers will work with you. They helped us set it up. A little bit of testing, and pretty soon we were running them ourselves, and we have over 400 sets out around the world. Have some engines that have over 1,200 hours on them and are still running fine. I haven't had a single failure in the field. My own engine here, this particular engine has 500 hours on a set of pistons, and it was just down, and it seems to be working perfectly. When you're building, of course, you find a lot of things that you think you can make better. Some of the things that I've done are where the wing plugs into the fuselage, I've made a cuff come out over top of that crack. Otherwise, you would just see this crack where the wing plugs in to the side of the fuselage. And then also up here on the back of the canopy, I did kind of the same thing. There's a little cuff here so that when you close the canopy, it covers over the crack between the back of the canopy and the fuselage. Keeps the rain from coming in. Okay, and there's one more thing I want to show you down here that was kind of my own little deal, was to cover up the mechanism for the nose gear. I made this little fairing around here, and I figured, well, that's a good place to put the landing light inside of there. So it kind of fares out the landing gear and makes it look a little better. But that wasn't part of the kit. You know, that's just one of those, you know, things that you look at and you say, wow, I could do that better. It took me about 4 months just to do the panel. I can run around pretty much standard flight instruments here, the VOR, an artificial horizon, your altimeter, a compass, airspeed. This is a turn coordinator, but also an autopilot. So when I have my GPS in, which isn't in here right now, but it reads the GPS and I can just say, I want to go here, and the autopilot takes over and I'm on my way. Go ahead and take a nap. The rest of this is intercom, communications, radio, transponder, vertical speed, directional gyro. The rest of them are engine instruments and fuel gauges, pretty standard things like you see in your car. The inside here, real cows gave their lives for this leather right here. There's no Naugus dead right here. It's a comfortable little plane. That's the problem though. You get 2 adults in here, you have to be really close, good buddies. But that's what makes it go fast on only 90 horsepower. Okay, well I have pitch and roll trim with this little China hat. If I want the nose to go down, I just push it up, or if I want it to come up, I push it down. This works my flaps. When I'm ready to land, I can just hold this down and the flaps will go down. Then when I land, I can just push it up and it'll lock up and the flaps will come all the way up again. This one goes through the memories in my radio, and when I come to the right one, then I can put it in the active window by flipping it the other way. And of course, this has the trigger on the back to key the radio, the communications radio. Fuel selector, which I put a float switch in each tank. There's 3 tanks. So whichever tank I have selected, if I'm not paying attention and I let the fuel get too low in it, I have an audible warning that comes on and says, check fuel selector, check fuel selector. Looks pretty good. It's almost idiot-proof. Almost. The trouble with building is it's kind of a disease. You know, you get started and you enjoy it so much, and of course the wife enjoys it because she knows you're right out in the garage. And there's something to look at. When you're done, you have something to stand and look at and go places in. And it's a good thing. It's an honorable hobby.
Here's another guy that will put a smile on your face every time you see him. And it's no surprise that he and Jerry Eastman are good buddies, as you'll see. The two of them are constantly working on ways to make their Pulsars better and more efficient. It was very windy when I had to grab an interview with him, so I apologize for some of the wind distortion in the audio. But it can't take away from Ricky Thomason of Collierville, Tennessee.
No, actually it's my second plane. Now, see, we tell everybody we're friendly competitors. That proves it, right? This is my second project. I built an Avid Flyer first, and then I flew it around for about a year and a half. And I started to do the Pulsar first, but two things kind of kept me from it. One, and I've got no rationale for this, but in my mind, I did not like a wooden spar. And two, the Avids and the kit boxes have been around a long time, and I figured it would be a good, safe, first-time project, because I didn't know how well I was going to do this, you know. But after flying the Avid around for a while, and when I found out that Mark had went to a composite, laminated composite spar, then I went to San Antonio and visited the factory. So, if you fly this airplane, if you're thinking about building one, if you fly a Pulsar, you probably will buy one. And so I knew before I left that day I was going to be buying one of these kits. It was a matter of working the deal. So, but within a week I had purchased one though. If you ever put together a model airplane as a kid, you can build one of these pretty much because it's basically just like that, except guess what? The parts are bigger. And it's the epoxies, you bond the pieces together and everything. Now, how much of it do you want to do it all yourself, or do you want to do, if you don't trust yourself with electronics, there's a lot of people in the group here that know electronics, or you don't want to paint it, somebody else can paint it for you. I've enjoyed building it, but I built it to fly. And no, it's not difficult to build at all. Yeah, I started out with Cessnas. I had a Cessna Cardinal, and I went to a Comanche 250, and then I had the Avid, and then I built the Pulsar. And this airplane is IFR equipped, and it has, I fly it just like I did the Comanche when I had it. If I want to go and I want to fly, I get in the plane and I go. I have always avoided thunderstorms and lightning and continue to do so no matter what I flew. It is IFR, and the Pulsar will carry a pretty nice load of ice too. I don't recommend you go out and do that on purpose, and I didn't, but I do know from experience it will. Well, a lot of people with the Pulsar have had problems with the exhaust systems cracking. Some people have had more severe problems than others. I flew the standard AD exhaust system for 700 hours, and I had one break at about 80 hours over on that side with a short pipe. A little short pipe was a big problem child. And after that happened to me, I came up with a little brace and shared that with everybody to brace the canister, which was supporting, the short pipe was supporting the canister. Once we put that little brace on there, I didn't have any more problems. I was through, but other people added the brace and they still had continued to have brakes and everything. So a couple of years ago, I actually thought of this in my mind, but I wasn't having too many problems and I wasn't sure it would work. About 3 months ago though, this canister over here, the tailpipe cracked around the bottom. And I figured another builder, Larry Eubanks, had a problem with this. The center vertical stack pipe had actually corroded all the way in two from the blast of the rear exhaust string. And then that let it move, and so it cracked around the bottom of the can. So I figured I had the same thing. had it fixed and reinforced where it didn't matter if it was broke, it wasn't going to break again. But I knew it was a matter of time, same thing was going to happen over here. So I thought, okay, it's time. It's time to do what I've kind of been thinking about. So knowing that my system was about to wear out and everybody else would benefit from this if it did in fact work out, I had this vision of a small muffler on each side right here. The Pulsar cowling is so tight, there's not room for many alternatives in here. Where the old system had a vertical can here with an exhaust flow of about that long from the rear cylinder into the canister, and an exhaust flow of this long from the front cylinder to the canister. Totally unbalanced. And certainly no way that I could see any way it could be tuned at all. So I wanted to come up with a small muffler for each side that would fit here comfortably inside the cowling and balance out the flows from all the cylinders. So that's what I've achieved with this right here. Each cylinder, the exhaust stream travels exactly the same distance. I won't say that it's not a tuned exhaust, but at least it's a balanced flow exhaust. I got to run some numbers on it to see how to tune it for cruise RPM as far as I'm concerned. Now, if performance is any indication of whether you got back pressure or not, and again, I'm not ready to claim increased performance from this system, but I will say definitively, it didn't hurt a thing. Because right now it appears that with the only change being the exhaust system, and unfortunately I knew better, but I did it anyway, I made another aerodynamic change. There appears to be at least a 5 mile an hour increase in speed at a given RPM setting on a two-way opposing speed run. But again, I won't say that's the exhaust system. There's two priorities when I did this. One was to come up with something that hopefully help out everybody else that's having trouble with these things. They're not, the systems they were running, everybody was getting, some guys are carrying around spare exhaust systems when they travel. That's not good. So I made it out of real heavy stuff. I wanted it to be a safe fix for the problems we're having. It is secured to the engine, bolted on both ends. There will be no vibration here. And so the first priority was safety, second priority is increased performance. And it's too early to say whether I've achieved either one, but I think I've got both going here. A friend of mine, we determined the cost of that extra drag up there, that little thing that breaks on these folks all the time and gets gnawed up and twisted and everything. What you need to overcome that's about 15 horsepower. So what does this guy do? He goes out and gets a set of pistons put together that gives him 15 more horsepower. So we run pretty doggone close.
Get the bugs off.
I'd like to thank all the people you see here for taking the time to talk about their Pulsars and for giving you their opinions and advice. A special thanks to Greg Smith for inviting us to the Pulsar Fly-In and for his efforts to keep this fine group of flyers working together. My son Jack, who is considering a career in aviation, and I really enjoyed our 2 days in Lawrence, Kansas with the Pulsar people. Because of this opportunity, we have really taken a liking to this sleek, efficient kit plane. Maybe one of these days we'll show up in our own Pulsar. Until then, this is Brian Fitzgerald wishing you blue skies and tailwinds as we finish out with Ricky Thomason doing the honors.